tonight. After the introduction. All right, good evening and welcome to Uptown Bills. It's time for Uptown Bills Live. We're glad you're here. And we have, as usual, a little assortment of things for you tonight. We have an audience here, and we also have an audience watching us on television. Hello, welcome. Uptown Bills is named for Bill Sachter, who's the man in the picture behind me, the guy with the beard. Bill came to Iowa City in the 1970s and ended up with a little coffee shop in North Hall on the university campus. We're an outgrowth of that original coffee shop. The original one is still there, and we're like the bigger, badder Bills. So we're 15 years old and have been in this location since 2010. The idea of Uptown Bills was to have a larger version of the original coffee shop. The original coffee shop had coffee and a few other things and some experiments with books and music, but Uptown Bills has done much more along the way. Just in this room, we have a used bookstore and, of course, the performance venue and a coffee shop. And our newest project is a radio station, KICI. I'll tell you more about that a little later. But we've also been involved in starting a vintage shop, bakery, a furniture refinishing business, a record store, a drum shop, a little publishing business, and a number of online businesses. Now, not all of them are still running. People will start them and we'll give them some support, and then they'll say, well, that was fun, I'm through now, thank you very much, and go on their way. For example, the vintage shop we ran for 10 years, and then the key person involved when we were going to sell the building, but keep the vintage shop, and the person who was managing the vintage shop said at that time, well, that's long enough for me, thank you. And she still comes around. She's working on the vintage shop on a much smaller scale. This little table by the door is often where Gretchen will have a little display of a tiny little vintage shop. So Bill spent a good share of his life in a state institution for individuals with disabilities. At the time, it was not uncommon for even children to be sent off to these state institutions. Bill ended up at Faribault, Minnesota in 1920, and in the 1960s was released and sent back to Minneapolis. Along the way, he met Barry Morrow. Barry is the man in the picture behind me with the tie. And Bill and Barry became friends. And when Bill was offered a job here in Iowa City, when Barry was offered a job here in Iowa City, Bill came along. And that's how the coffee shop emerged as a job for Bill. Barry thought this was quite a journey of Bill's life up to that point. And so he wrote a long story, which appeared in the Des Moines Register about Bill's life. The story evolved into the screenplay for a movie. It was actually Barry's first effort at a screenplay. And the movie was called Bill. Mickey Rooney played Bill, and a young Dennis Quaid played Barry. There behind me in the picture, Dennis Quaid is the guy with all the hair up in the corner. And Bill became like a celebrity. And people came to visit him, to see the real Bill in Iowa City. They would come, like folks go to the Field of Dreams site now, because of the movie. They would come here to see Bill. There was a second film shortly after called Bill on His Own, which in addition to Mickey Rooney and Dennis Quaid, also featured a young Helen Hunt. She played a University of Iowa social work student, and also a musician before he had his really large band. Lyle Lovett makes an appearance in the film. He's singing a song while the characters playing Bill and Barry are walking along on the beach. So we have copies of the film here, and you're welcome to come by, and we show them from time to time too. In addition, there's a documentary film called A Friend Indeed, and we're giving away a copy of that this evening. So did you sign up? Okay, good. giving away a copy of that. Unfortunately, our drawing is only for people who are present. Someday, maybe we'll figure out a way to have a drawing for folks who are watching us, but won't be tonight. All right. Let's get on with the show. I think our first performer tonight is Kenneth, right? And he's going to read us a story. So get out your blanket and teddy, and we'll have him come up. And whoa, that's a good audience. They're already applauding. Is this high enough? Okay. Up close. And
Thanks, Tom. And thanks to Uptown Bills for sponsoring the event. This is the first time that I'm going to be reading like this on a stage, and it's a story about a young man and an old man in New York City. Also, I should mention this is my television debut. The most lamentable death of Gimpy the pigeon. Paul left Marlin Bookstore and turned north on Broadway, walking toward Union Square. It was early morning. The sky was dark. He was bundled in a sweater and wearing an overcoat. He carried a bag on his back, not too heavy, that contained the following items: a laptop computer with a spare battery, a portable receipt printer, a cellular flip phone, about 100 bookmarks rubber banded together, a Metro card, a month-old issue of The New Yorker, and $250 in cash. Paul was a bookseller. He got to Union Square quickly and shuffled down the steps into the subway station. The sun hadn't risen yet. He fished around in his bag for the Metro card and swiped to gain entry. The turnstile beeped aggressively at him, and he moved through it. Union Square is normally one of the busiest stations in the whole city because it is positioned at the intersection of 14th and 4th Avenue. This is where the square gets its name, but most people, including native New Yorkers, assume the name comes from the area's close historical ties with labor unions. There are many facts about New York that don't add up to any greater truth. Like the fact that on this particular morning, the station was practically deserted. It was cold in the subway. Paul got to the M-train platform and sat on a bench. An electronic voice spoke through a wall-mounted speaker. The next M train will be arriving in 17 minutes. He closed his eyes and started to focus on his breath. He could hear trains in other parts of the station arriving and departing. There was one other man waiting for the same train as Paul, but he was standing on the opposite end of the platform with earbuds in, listening to music. A rat squeaked and scurried between Paul's feet, but he didn't open his eyes. In fact, he didn't open his eyes until the electronic voice spoke again 15 minutes later. The next M train is now arriving on the Queens-bound track. Paul wasn't going all the way to Queens. He was getting off at Central Park. The train came thundering into the station like a giant underground steel dragon. The brakes squealed and it came to a stop. Then the doors opened automatically. Paul stood up and stepped onto the train. He was the only person in his car, so he found a seat easily. This is the reason Paul tolerated his position at the bookstore. He was up early enough that he didn't have to fight other rush-hour commuters for the privilege of being comfortable on the trains. They started rolling and accelerated quickly. 20 minutes later, after numerous stops, Paul got off the train and ascended to the street level with his bag. The first rays of sunlight were peeking up over the horizon somewhere in the direction of Brooklyn. A thin blanket of snow lay untouched inside the borders of Central Park. Paul breathed in deeply. He worked at the Parkside bookstall. One other guy worked there with him, and they met uptown every morning at 7. They usually drank coffee and talked about the news for a while before setting up. His name was Brooks. Paul was walking toward the bookstall, and Brooks was sitting in a chair, reading on the sidewalk. Marlin Books paid rent on this stretch of sidewalk, and they kept piles of new and used merchandise in a shed. Brooks had a cup of coffee in his hand and another on the ground beside his chair. When he saw Paul, he reached down and picked up the coffee, then stood up and held it out. Paul took the coffee and set his bag down on the ground. "Morning," said Brooks. "Morning," said Paul. "How's the little fish this morning?" said Brooks. "Still swimming," he said. The little fish is the not entirely affectionate nickname that employees of Marlin Bookstore had for their owner, Lucy Marlin. She was the third generation of the Marlin family to own the bookstore, and her husband was a Democratic senator from Oregon. Lucy's father, Max Marlin, or the Big Fish, was also present in the business, but aging quickly so that most of the day-to-day operations of the store were left up to his daughter. The Big Fish spent most of his time at work, sitting among the stacks, inspecting spines. Brooks was much older than Paul. Rumor has it that Brooks was the only Marlin bookseller to have completed the trifecta of seeing war, prison, and institutionalization. Paul was from a generation that had cell phones in high school and never thought of military service as compulsory. They got along well. "It's cold," said Paul. "No kidding," said Brooks, shivering. He looked like a New York City cop. "What are you reading?" "Nothing good," said Brooks. "Some kind of experimental postmodernism garbage." "You know, there are some people who don't believe in evolution?" "Yeah," said Brooks. "Idiots. Evidence is overwhelming. They are always asking for intermediate species or whatever, but when the intermediate species shows up, they want to see another and another one. It's a circular argument, and you shouldn't listen to them. The only thing you can learn from that kind of thinking is how people are able to rationalize anything in support of their own worldview." "Yeah, but the watchmaker, though." Okay, there may be something to the idea of a disinterested higher power, like what the deists believed in. But that doesn't have any relevance to the theory of evolution. The simple fact is that the explanatory power of natural selection makes it virtually impossible to ignore. For so long, scientists and other inquisitive people were asking themselves where the wide variety of life came from, and then Darwin came along and answered all those questions with one simple answer. We are all related, from the microorganisms to the elephants. It's really that simple. But what meaning does it give to your life? What kind of purpose? Said Paul. Science doesn't answer questions of purpose. Evolution doesn't necessarily conflict with the idea of God in any fundamental way. That's why I allow for the possibility of a disinterested deity, like the blind watchmaker. As for purpose, I'll tell you a story. For 12 years, I've been working up here at the bookstall. I come in at 7 and leave at 7, 4 days a week for 12 years. I make $15 an hour. And the big fish, how much does he make? Well, on Christmas Day alone, they made $100,000 in receipts. That's one day. And I'm here for $15 an hour. But okay, that's neither here nor there. I'm not trying to start a class war, but let me tell you now, in all sincerity, that there are plenty of Marlin booksellers who would like nothing better. I come out here and talk to tourists and occasionally try to sell a book. I have a good life, and no doubt some people think I'm privileged. Most of the time, I read and let business things run themselves. But let's move on to the bigger picture. All the while, I'm here observing the greatest experiment in human history. America is just a big experiment, you know? It's a police state. Look around, there are cops everywhere. Okay, I can see that you're anxious, so I'll get to the point. I've been working here 12 years, and every morning I bring a bag of peanuts with me. I get a cup of coffee, and I sit here with my peanuts feeding the pigeons from Central Park. After a week of that, you start to recognize the same birds coming back to get food from you every day. During my first month here, I got to the point where I could recognize 20 birds by sight alone. I gave them all names, like Fluffy and Rosie and Runt and Geezer. But by far my favorite was a bird named Gimpy. I called him Gimpy because he was missing a toe on his left foot. Lots of pigeons are missing toes, but Gimpy was my favorite. He always waited for the others to eat before he would fly down and land on my shoulder. He was always thinking of the other pigeons, good old Gimpy. Well, I kept on bringing peanuts and feeding the birds, and every day Gimpy would be here waiting for me with the others. Brooks pointed to the 3-foot concrete wall behind his chair that separated the sidewalk from the park. I don't like to admit it, but I had gotten a bit attached. I looked forward to coming to work just to see all the pigeons because they were my friends and I knew what they wanted from me. So it wasn't just a socially constructed game like it is when you talk to another person. Then one day I was out here feeding them and I heard a screech high overhead. Most of the tourists don't realize there are hawks that live in the park. Some of the hawks probably roost in skyscrapers. I don't know for sure. If you haven't heard one yet, just wait. The war cries are blood-curdling. So I look up and see this dark shadow circling high above the sidewalk like a ghost. In a flash, it dove straight at the flock gathered around the bookstall. There was a mass takeoff, and my whole field of vision was filled with flapping pigeons' wings when the hawk made his strike. I heard a pained squawk go up, and my heart practically froze in my chest. It was Gimpy. The hawk shot back up with immense speed and dexterity, and I could see Gimpy hanging limply in his beak. The hawk perched in a tree right across the street, and I had to watch my friend devoured before my very eyes. If that doesn't prove that nature is evil, I don't know what does. Brooks sipped his coffee. Paul looked at the sky, and they set up some card tables to put books on them, getting ready for the morning rush.
Stay right there for a second, if you would. I'm going to ask you a couple of...
You're not done with me yet.
No, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. That was a very nice story. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
How long have you been writing? would you say?
Well, I've been writing things like this ever since I was 12 years old, I think, when I wrote my first piece of Harry Potter fan fiction.
Ah, wow, okay. And where's home? Where are you?
I was born on an Air Force base in Missouri
Uh-huh,
and grew up mostly in Des Moines.
okay. And are you living here now, or are you still living in Des Moines?
I am living here in the Gaslight Village. It's
Ooh,
kind of a historical place.
yeah.
And I've been doing some research about the place, and I came across a few ghost stories on the internet.
Ooh, okay. Did you specifically pick that when you were coming here? Did you know about it before?
I did know about it from my time as an undergraduate,
Okay.
but after college, I went to New York for a couple of years and then came back.
Okay, well, we'll have to hear more about it. There's lots of stories about Gaslight
Yeah,
Village.
lots-
We'd
lots
love to hear some ghost stories
Yeah.
at a future date. Well, thank you again.
Okay.
You're-
Thanks, Tom.
You're free to leave now.
Thank you.
All right, where's Mark? Should we have a drawing? What do you think? I've got this wonderful book of sketches, Star Wars sketches we're giving away, and then a copy of the film, the documentary film about Bill called A Friend Indeed. So, come on up and wherever you can come up. Just me here, but you'd think there was a whole army on stage or something. All right. We give the documentary away first?
Sure.
Okay. All right, the suspense. Who's going to get the documentary film, A Friend Indeed?
Ed.
Ed. You're welcome. There's a letter on the back from the filmmaker who invites you to comment on what you think of the film. So, all right. The Star Trek sketchbook, the original series. Da da da. All right. Ooh. Yeah. Whoa. Whoa, whoa. You'll be the envy of the neighborhood. All right. Thank you, Mark. Very good, very good. I'll tell you about a couple things before we get to our next performers. We have music here. We do this Uptown Bill's Live every Thursday night, but we also have music every Saturday night. And this week it's our annual Elvis tribute night. Whoa. And we have a number of people who are coming to sing a couple of Elvis songs. We have room for one or two more if you are interested. Come down to the coffee house and sign up. Also on Saturday we have an Irish music session. That's at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So, and then the next week, Friday the 13th, the Chameleons are coming. A great ensemble of seven women, great performers, and they'll be here on Friday the 13th. We struggled to find a date for them. With that many people, you know, it's not easy to find a date. So finally decided on that one. And then also later this month, on Saturday, January 21st, Dave Moore is coming. There's nothing like Dave Moore at Uptown Bill's, I guarantee you. It's got to be his favorite place, and the audience and Dave relax in a way that I've never seen anyplace else. So it's just stunning to be here. So you never know exactly. Last time he was talking about his being a little kid in Cedar Rapids, which is the basis for one of his songs. The day I pitched a perfect game, and there was somebody in the audience who had been, you know, a kid with him, and it's just marvelous things. Another night he talked about being a student at Stanford. He went to Stanford for a year. But anyway, just marvelous things happen here. So that's Saturday, January 21st. So time now to cancel your other plans and get the sitter for that. Much good evening. If you want to find out more about what's going on, you can check out our calendar. We have copies on the little table by the door. And for those of you watching, if you go to the Uptown Bill's website, uptownbills.org. You can see a selection of what's ahead. And we also maintain some, I think, 6 different Facebook pages with information about different things going on here. We killed one off last year, but whenever a new group of volunteers come in, they always say, well, we need a Facebook page for that. So there's one devoted strictly to Wednesdays, and there's one for the bookshop, and there's one for our, what we call our Uptown Bills Media Project, lifting up books and other materials around abilities awareness. We have a special shelf in the other room for that. All right, enough from me. Let's see if we can get our next group to come up. Be a lot of chords to work on here to get them set up, but we'll do our best. Now's the time. If you want to go to the refrigerator and get that snack, do it now. And we'll still be on the air, but we've just got to get some chords connected for them.
4 chairs. Yeah.
All right. 3 chairs altogether, huh? Yes.
And I can sit in the middle. That'd be, how would that be? Maybe I'd be able to see the music. Let's put this down. There we go. Wow, all right. Plug me into something. Yeah, we could all kind of like, we could all like sort of face each other like this, you know, and then I heard a new guitar player joke. Was it really a bass player joke? And I haven't. Mr. T downstairs told me this, a guitar player joke, which I want to add to my repertoire. So, how does a guitar player ask for a date? He says, I'm a guitar player in a band. How does a bass player ask for a date? I know a guitar player in a band. And it's all right. Here goes. All right. Sorry. I was trying to be helpful. Yeah, yeah. Well, it's okay. Nothing happened. I'm always in the market for a new guitar player joke. So I can't remember what's the there's a mandolin player joke that I knew that I can't remember what it is now. There are mandolin player jokes too, but. Oh man! All right. Yeah. How many guitar players does it take to screw in a light bulb? 101, one to screw it in, and 100 more to stand around saying, "I can do that." Yeah, I'm sorry. Of course, singers, you know, there's like soprano jokes are because sopranos tend to be prima donnas, not like our premier donna, but prima donnas. So the one is, how many sopranos does it take to screw in a light bulb? Say, well, only one. She holds the bulb, and the world revolves around her. Donna's an alto. It's okay. Of course. So I need to be the one seeing all the. Okay, so if I get back like this. Okay. She's light. Very good. Close. Maybe you should give her the SM58, because that would be more unidirectional, or omnidirectional. And I know they can't hear me, but give her this mic. And then, that's the problem, whistling into a microphone.
Oh boy.
Better. Yeah. As long as you don't whistle right into it, you'll probably be okay, won't you?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Push it back just a little bit so we get more light on it.
Yeah.
A little bit more light. you can see it, right? Huh? Can you see that? That's all strum C chords.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, here we go. Oh,
Oh,
you got the microphone. I've been calling us the Fretful Trio.
how about we are the Fretful Trio? Fretful Trio.
Yes, sir. Ukulele, 12 string. You could say it because I can't hear it.
Okay, so I have a 4-string baritone ukulele. Tom has a 12-string guitar, and Ed has a 6-string mandolin. Oh, there you go. 8-string mandolin.
4 plus 8 plus 12 is 24. Yeah. Okay. How about just do like. Repeating and fading.
So this song is called California Dreamin'.
I can kind of see it. Can you see it? You see a little bit. I need trifle. Do they have quadruples?
I don't know. you very much. And our last song is called Song on a Winter's Night by Gordon Lightfoot. Thank you, and we're the Fretful Trio.
Got something to read for us? All right. And the best thing was, I played it in tune. I had a 12-string in tune. Can you believe that? The joke is, how long does it take to tune a 12-string? Nobody knows.
All right, that was the Fretful Trio. Where might we see you? Do we have a performance coming up somewhere? Who knows? Is the answer I got. All right. I wanted to say a little more about our radio project first. It's KICI 105.3 FM. We applied for and received a license from the FCC to operate a radio station. It's a 100-watt station, which would reach about 5 miles. And we've been working on this for a little over a year. There's a committee that meets here every week. We've taken some steps already. We've rented space for a studio behind us, in the building behind us. We purchased some equipment, including an antenna. And our plan had been, so far, to put the antenna on top of old brick. But because that's a historic building, there are some questions about whether we can do that, whether it will stick up too far. And so those have to be resolved, or we have to find another place. One other place might be atop one of the parking ramps, or on top of a county, city parking ramps, or on top of a county spot. So That's where we are there. The next purchase is the actual transmitter, and that will cost about $2,000. And we have been raising money with a series of special events, and then also with a GoFundMe campaign. In fact, we heard from GoFundMe today saying, gosh, this campaign's getting a lot of interest. So we're kind of excited about that. Anyway, if you wish to check out the GoFundMe page, you just go to GoFundMe and then search for KICI, and you can find it there. We also have a Facebook page, another Facebook page, this one for the radio station. And on that page, you can, if you scroll down a little bit, you can listen to some sample programming. We've already done some samples of different shows we might have, and you can listen to them there. We also have a Tumblr page for KICI, and there's nothing on that page except links to audio programs, audio of programs that may be on the air. There are at least 6, maybe 8 people who have expressed interest in producing a show or hosting a show, and who have done a sample program or two. There's one about local music. There's one called Iowa City Geek. There's one that leans towards news and public affairs. Well, there are actually a couple that are sort of public affairs programs. So check those out and see what you think, and we would welcome your support getting this on the air. I think that's about it about the radio station. But it's great fun imagining what we could do and to have a locally owned radio station like right here. I think when we first applied for it, we were surprised how easily we met the requirements. Wanted a community organization with a local board that had been around for a while, things like that. But we still thought, maybe 10 people or 10 different organizations will apply for this. And we moved pretty rapidly through the FCC process. It's this giant federal agency, and here we are, this tiny little organization. But they've been very helpful and very good along the way. So your federal government at work has been a great help to us. All right, I got a couple things I wanted to share with you. One was I was thinking the other day about I was looking at some things the university had passed out about student groups, and one of the things they had mentioned was that the university was one of the first in the country. They say the first, but they're not the first, to have a gay student group on campus. And actually the first was the University of Minnesota about a year earlier. But that got me to thinking about some of the other things in the same area where Iowa was ahead. You know one of the stories, of course, about gay marriage. But I picked out a couple of people I wanted to tell you about whose roots are in Iowa, or whose roots are in the Midwest. One is in Iowa and one is in Minnesota. It's a good day to remember pioneers like Iowan Pat Bond and Minnesotan Jack Baker. They helped pave the way. Tolerance and a sense of fairness are deeply rooted Midwest values. So it shouldn't come as any surprise that Iowa was one of the first states to grant legal approval to gay marriages. Plenty of people on both coasts assume that, in general, they are more open-minded and progressive than those of us who live in Iowa and neighboring states. But the roots of open-mindedness in California and New York have often been strengthened by Midwest values. The lives of two people active in gay rights illustrate this very well. Both are from the Midwest. Both have played major roles in raising awareness around the country through their lives and work. Pat Bond, 1925 to 1990, is the first person I want to introduce you to. If you go to San Francisco, you'll find her held in high regard. In fact, an award for a gay rights activist is given in her name every year. But Pat was not from San Francisco or even from California. She grew up in Davenport. Pat left Iowa to join the military. She enlisted in the Army and ended up stationed in Japan. But in 1947, the Army launched a campaign to remove lesbians from the military. More than 500 women were dishonorably discharged during the campaign, which many historians now call a witch hunt. Bond escaped harassment because she married a gay man. After leaving the service, she moved to San Francisco, studied theater at San Francisco State, and became part of the thriving North Beach district. During the 1970s and 1980s, Bond created and starred in a number of one-woman shows. One focused on her growing up in the Midwest, another profiled Gertrude Stein. Bond took these shows on tours around the U.S., especially to college campuses. She was also an activist and a community organizer in San Francisco. She died in 1990, but is remembered with the Pat Bond Award, presented each year to a lesbian activist over age 60. Jack Baker, who was born in 1942, is the other person I'd like you to know about. Jack and his friends organized the first gay student group on a college campus in the U.S. It wasn't at Berkeley or at Columbia. It was at the University of Minnesota in 1969. A gay student group was formed at the University of Iowa in 1970. Baker and his partner, Michael McConnell, were the first gay couple to apply for a marriage license in the U.S. That was in 1970 in Minneapolis. The registrar said no, but there's a wonderful picture of them standing at the counter, applying for this marriage license. Through the efforts of Baker and other gay rights activists, an equal marriage for all statement was included in the 1972 platform for the Minnesota Democratic Party. These are just two of the people, Midwest people, who've been longtime activists for equality in our communities. Their stories are important because of the work they have done, but they're also important because they illustrate that the consciousness about tolerance and fairness for all is as strong in the Midwest as it is in other parts of the country. And in some ways, the journey towards civil rights for all, gay or straight, emerged earliest in the Midwest in places like Minneapolis and Davenport and Iowa City. It's a heritage we can all be proud of. Thank you. I think that's about it for us for tonight. Hope that you've enjoyed watching, and we're appreciative of those of you who are here, who came out. And we're going to say tonight, for everyone who came, please pick out a book that you'd like to take home with you as our thanks to the audience for coming out on such a frigid night. So anywhere, unfortunately, you won't be able to pick out something in art or history, art or music, because that's in the other room. Westerns and pets are also in there too. But everything else is out here, so take a look around and pick something you'd like to have. Thank you very much, and have a nice evening. Good night.
All right. So I'm a little congested right now, little allergies going on. But at least it's still warm outside in summer, so I won't complain. So most of the songs I'm going to play are like my favorite artists, but this is actually one. I was lucky enough to spend a semester in Russia in college. And one of the cool things I learned, I did learn a little bit about vodka, but not too much. But I mostly learned a lot about music and how important that was over there. And I learned a lot of cool songs in Russian. And this is one of my favorites. It's actually a love song. It's called "Не уходи, побудь со мною," so it means "Don't leave, stay with me." This is my wife's favorite, so I'll go ahead and dedicate it to her. But you'll just hear that repeated over and over again. So it's a typical love song, like I hug you, I want to kiss you, I love you more than anything, blah blah blah. But then again, the title is "Не уходи, побудь со мною."
Поцелуй, я
One of my other favorite groups, I listened to them a lot when I was in junior high, which is a while ago, is the Beatles. Does anybody else like the Beatles here? Anybody else a fan? This song's called I've Just Seen a Face.
I've just seen a face, I can't forget the time or place where we just met. She's just the girl for me, and I want all the world to see we've met. Ooh, had it been another day, I might have looked the other way, and I would never been away. Instead, I think I'll dream of her tonight. Ooh, falling, yes I am falling, but she keeps calling me back again. I have never known the likes of this. I've been alone and I have missed things and left outside. Other girls were never quite like this. Falling, yes I am falling, but she keeps calling me back again. I've just seen her face, I can't forget the time or place where we just met. She's just a girl for me, and I want all the world to see we've met. Falling, yes I am falling, but she keeps calling me back again. Whoa, I'm falling, yes I am falling, but she keeps calling me back again.
Elvis is also one of my favorite artists, and I was telling Tom earlier, I think the thing I like about him more than his music and his dancing, is probably his hair. Just always been a big fan of his hair. But this is one of my favorite songs. I'm pretty sure this is the first song that he recorded with Sun Records, and I think he did it for his mama, Mother's Day or her birthday or something, and it's called That's Alright Mama. So any other Elvis fans? Everybody? Right? Okay, cool.
Well, that's alright, mama, that's alright for you. That's alright, mama, just any way you do it, that's alright. That's alright. That's alright now, mama, any way you do it. Well, mama, she done told me, Papa done told me too. Son, that gal you fooling with, she ain't no good for you, but that's alright. That's alright. That's alright now,
think I've played this one before, but it's one of my favorites. This one's called Blackbird.
Blackbird sing in the dead of night. Take these broken wings and learn to fly. All your life, you were only waiting for this moment to arise. Blackbird sing in the dead of night. Take me sunken eyes and learn to see. All your life, you were only waiting for this moment to be free.